Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is so very fitting on this first day of Black History Month that we recognize a former member who passed away last month. Today, we will be recognizing the good works of Darryl Owens, who was the former representative of the 43rd District. Darryl was a colleague and a friend and a mentor. So this is it's an honor for me to talk about his works on the floor here today. Darryl was the first African American to break racial barriers on many fronts. He was the first African American assistant prosecutor of the Louisville Police Court. He was the first Black assistant Kentucky Attorney General. He was the first Black president of the Legal Aid Society and the first African American elected to the Jefferson County Fiscal Court, representing my home district of C District for 21 years. He also served as the NAACP President, Louisville branch from 1970 to 1976, and was instrumental in the successful lawsuit to desegregate Jefferson County's public schools. He was elected to the House of Representatives in 2005 and served as the House Judiciary Committee Chair. He was an early supporter of the African American Heritage Committee, providing seed funding for the establishment of the African American Heritage Foundation, which is now the Kentucky Center for African American Heritage. He also served on the University of Louisville's Board of Trustees, the Louisville Urban League, and was a member of the Kentucky Workmen's Compensation Board. Those are some of the official things he did. But those of us that served with him knew him as a great storyteller. And many of us had had the occasion to carpool with him from Louisville to Frankfort. And you learn a lot when you carpool with somebody, an hour up, an hour back, day after day after day. Some of the things I learned was he thought you ought to be on time for everything. Some members of the carpool found out the hard way that he'd leave you if you weren't on time. He had a sweet tooth, and he didn't like for his wife to know about his sweet tooth. And his wife, Brenda Owens, is in the gallery with us today, along with friends Martina. She is joined by her friend Martina Eubanks and a longtime friend from here in our midst, Cassandra Cooper. He didn't like for Brenda to know when he was indulging his sweet tooth. And many of you know I always keep a basket of chocolate candy in my office. And I would be at my desk working, and he would very quietly come in, and I'd hear the basket rattle. And I would say, "I'm telling Brenda," and he'd say, "Go to H," and walk out. When we would carpool, he would also sneak an occasional, more than occasional, treat of hot chocolate at the local Heine Brothers before he met up with the carpool. And every day he spilt it on his tie. And we would help him clean it up, and he'd say, "Don't tell Brenda." But the one thing that he taught me, or the many things that he taught me, was what it was like growing up Black in Louisville at the time he grew up. And the stories he would tell about going to Bacon's shopping center in Shively, and as a young child, and his mom would have to hold the clothes up to him because African Americans weren't allowed to use the changing rooms to try on clothes. He told me a great story of when he was in the Army and he was traveling across country to go to Oakland, California. And I wonder if he was as bad a driver then as he was later in life, because he was not the greatest driver. But in traveling across with several other Army guys, there were many places across the Midwest that would not rent hotel rooms to African Americans. Now here's somebody serving their country and couldn't rent a hotel room. And one day, in a lot of frustration, and we've all seen Darryl get frustrated, he went right into the hotel or motel lobby, and a young woman was working the front desk, and he said, "Do you rent rooms to black people?" And she went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, okay." He was a wonderful friend, a wonderful mentor, and will be so much missed by many of us, and his legacy will live on and on. And I would like to yield to another member of the carpool, the lady from Jefferson 34, for remarks.
Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson 34.
Thank you, carpool member, sister carpool member, and lady, and speaker. I feel so honored to have been able to call Darryl Owens a friend, because he was a friend, and when he became your friend, you were his friend forever. He had you back. He might not agree with you, and he might fuss at you about it, but he was your friend, solid. Brenda, I'm so glad you're here, and we could tell you stories from here to eternity about the carpool, but we better keep some of those quiet. He was a mentor. As the lady from Jefferson 44, he was a carpooler with the lady, me, the former gentleman from Jefferson 35, Jim Wayne. And when Darryl drove, we'd have to say, "Get over in the other lane, you can't get off here." And he'd swerve over, and Jim Wayne, I guess I can say his name now, would say, "Can you pull over to Walmart so we can get some diapers?" But we always got here safe and sound. I learned from him respect, honesty, integrity, and he would never give up on an issue when it was important to him. As the lady said, he grew up African American in Louisville when there was such racial discrimination. Not that we've gotten rid of it all yet, but he grew up in a project, Shepherd Square, with a single mom who taught him a love of learning, how to be thrifty, and we know he was thrifty. He would collect pop bottles, he told me. There was a white police officer that patrolled Shepherd Square who was wonderful to him and helped him, he told me one time, and they had respect for the police, and the police gave a helping hand. He went to Central High School, and then when he graduated, he did his undergraduate degree in Ohio and got his law degree from Howard University. And there was no looking back. He broke barrier after barrier. And as he did that, he always made sure to offer a hand up to those who came after him. He kept the ladder down for those of us that follow in his footsteps. He fought hard for the regular working people, the vulnerable people. He tried to reform payday lending, which puts a lot of our most vulnerable people in debt for the rest of their lives. We can never hardly even get that heard in committee. He worked on expungement of certain felonies. He wanted to abolish the death penalty and sponsored, every year he was here, the restoration of voting rights. It used to always pass the House, but for some reason we can't get it out of the Senate, but that needs to happen. Now, we often hear about DWB, driving while black. And Darryl would tell us stories about that, but it's hard to really believe that that could happen in the 21st century. But one day, he and I were coming up to a Judiciary Committee meeting. He was the chair, and he was driving. He said, "This could be trouble. A black man with a white woman will get pulled over." I said, "Oh, no, no." About 10 miles later, the siren went off behind us. And he came up, the police officer came to my side. He said, "Sir, can I see your driver's license?" I said, "This is the chairman of Judiciary. We have a meeting, sir. He's a legislator and a chairman, and I'm also a legislator." He said, "Oh, can I see your ID?" And we showed him, and he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Go on." But it really was an eye-opener to see what happens to folks of another color. But he never let it get him down. He was always fun, always funny with a story in the car, and it passed many an hour driving back and forth. And we're going to miss him every day. And that integrity, that honesty, that on-timeness, and I think about him every day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I guess, do I yield back to you, lady?
Lady from Jefferson 44.
Thank you, lady. And now I'd like to yield to the gentleman from Franklin.
Gentleman from Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we kick off Black History Month, I am proud to join with the lady from Jefferson 44 and the lady from Jefferson 34 as we pay tribute to the life and legacy of all of our friends, to Darryl Owens. Like several of you, I have had the privilege to serve with Darryl for many years here in this house. His presence in my life, however, goes back much further. He was and will always forever be a civil rights and social justice icon here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. He broke barriers when he became, as the lady from Jefferson 44, the first African-American Assistant Attorney General and the first African-American person elected countywide in Jefferson County when he became a member of the Fiscal Court of Jefferson County. And that is the first time I really was introduced to him through television. Because as a young lad sitting there watching a person that looked like me winning an election in a county that was majority Caucasian, it gave me and it inspired me that yes, I could do the same thing as Darryl Owens. And when I became the chairman of the House Education Committee, he comes to my office that afternoon after it was announced, and he walked in with this big smile, and he said, "This is a big damn thing," is what he said to me. And he hugged me as if I was his own child. And he said, "I'm proud of you." Now, this goes back to when I was a young lad and I saw him on TV and I saw him get elected. And for him to grab me and tell me how proud he was of me and my accomplishment. But what he didn't really know is that he played a part in where I was. And so, Brenda, I say thank you, not only to you, but to your family. And as chairman, a member, and later as chairman of the House Judiciary, he was a proud and clear voice, as the lady from Jefferson 34 talked about, laws that are applied fairly and evenly. And he was a leader on both the felony expungement and felony voting rights. Darryl Owens was everything you want in an elected official. He had an open mind and a servant's heart. He listened more than he talked. He was eager to learn and impatient when wrong was being done, and he wanted to correct that wrong as fast enough as he could. He understood the importance of what we call, as the lady from Jefferson 44 earlier said, good trouble. Darryl may no longer be with us, but his memories and legacy have not dimmed, nor will they ever. Kentucky is far a better place because he was here. He broke barriers, as I mentioned, but he also built ladders, as the lady from Jefferson 34 referred to earlier, and he left them behind so many others, like me, would have an easier climb. And in ending, Mr. Speaker, let me say that Darryl Owens was all of these things, but for me personally, he was also my mentor, my colleague, and most importantly, my true friend. I miss his laugh and his mentorship and the way he always lit up whatever room he was in. And it means so much to me that we are able to honor him today and to have his family here to take part in this tribute to him. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back to the lady from Jefferson 44. Thank you.
Lady from Jefferson 44.
Thank you. For those of you who didn't have the opportunity to serve from him, you've heard about his very, very distinguished career. You've heard about what a great colleague and friend and mentor, but he was also a great family man. And he loved his wife, Brenda. He loved his daughters. And I think that showed in how he stood up for the females in the house and always was supportive. And the day that I was elected to the floor leader position, he called me and likewise said, "I am so proud of you. And if you have any trouble, I'm coming up there and helping you." And I know he would have. As we end this, I would like to yield to the lady from Jefferson 43 to act upon a resolution.
Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson 43.
Thank you, sir. Today is not only the first day of Black History Month, it's also the Lunar New Year, where we celebrate prosperity. And it's no accident that we're celebrating Darryl Owens, because everything he touched, every place he went, family, community, and friends, they prospered. And around him, you could only do well. He made things better. So I'm honored to hold his seat. And I'm honored that we are a type of people that celebrate people that make a difference for Kentucky. So with that, sir, I'd like to call House Resolution 53 to be read, please.
Clerk, please report.
House Resolution 53, a resolution adjourning the House of Representatives in honor and loving memory of Darryl Owens. Representative Pamela Stevenson.
Lady from Jefferson 43.
I move that the resolution be adopted.
Resolution is adopted without
Open the
objection.
board, please. I'm sorry. Open the board. Could we open the board?
Clerk, please open the board for those members wishing to indicate their co-sponsorship of the resolution. Thank you, Lady from Jefferson 43. Resolution is adopted without objection.